Don't underestimate the level of preparation that is required, but it's certainly a great opportunity for fast growth companies like ours to raise capital.
How advanced is the Australian telehealth market? And what are some of the challenges telehealth entrepreneurs are facing in scaling the market? Join us as we learn from an accomplished technology leader who's led multiple ICTs from across the globe on today's episode of Tomorrow's Tech. I'm Michael Fury, and today I'm joined by Kirsty Garrett, Chief Executive Officer of Doctors on Demand, a leader in the Australian telehealth market whose goal is to provide 24/7 convenient and quality healthcare throughout Australia. Welcome, Kirsty. Great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you, Michael.
Now, the pandemic's been a terrific accelerator for growth for ventures such as yours in the telehealth market. So for Doctors on Demand, what are still some of the challenges that you're facing in this sector?
Well, the first thing we do is change the perception that telehealth is not a quick telephone call from the back of a GP clinic. Quality of care is really accelerated when there's visual contact, and GPs are trained observers. So if people can't see their local GP or can't get into a clinic for days or weeks, then video consultations are the next best thing. But education is still required because the doctors do need to change their processes and change their practices, all the way through to the workflows around managing prescriptions and medical referrals and certificates at the end of the day. So there's certainly no shortage of demand. There's no constraints on the consumer side. Because we've seen that with COVID. You know, the surge of adoption of telehealth has been fantastic all around the world. But Australia is a little behind the rest of the world, and really the funding model is underpinning that. If you look at the US, 81% of clinicians there have already started adopting and accelerating their investment in digital technologies, including telehealth. And in the UK, you've got 43% of clinicians that have already implemented telehealth, and over there, patients within the NHS system since 2017 have had fully funded virtual care primary care services. So in Australia, there has been quite limited Commonwealth funding for video telehealth consultations. So at the moment, it's really there for people who are prepared to pay a gap fee, or a very limited part of the community where they might have had a face-to-face consultation with a GP within the last 12 months. So sadly, that rules out millions of people who are rural or remote, who might have disability or mobility issues to physically get into a GP, and a whole lot of young people that aren't seeing a doctor all the time. So there's enormous opportunities there to be able to provide a great quality service and provide growth for the business.
So it sounds like Australia's got some catching up to do. Now, Doctors on Demand is considering an IPO over the next 18 months or so. What was it that kind of led to your thinking around that? And what would your advice be to entrepreneurs who are thinking of following in your similar footsteps?
Don't underestimate the level of preparation that is required, but it's certainly a great opportunity for fast growth companies like ours to raise capital. What's important is to have a reliable revenue forecast and a very defendable forecast going forward. If the organisations are pre-market, then obviously they need to have a really strong differentiator and a very large addressable market. It's really important to have a look at all of the other mid-caps that are listed and that are in the market that you're going to be competing for capital with, because you need to be able to have a very strong differentiator. So you can't just rely on your financials to hold you in good stead. The other aspect as well is that it's a lot of work. You know, there's a lot of distraction for a CEO and a CFO to get organised and produce that 200-page prospectus where every line needs to be sourced and defendable. So it's absolutely worth doing, and we're looking forward to the challenge. So
with all those challenges, what prompted you to pursue an IPO in the first place?
Well, telehealth really has been put on the map as a result of COVID, not just for virtual primary care, but for mental health and allied health. And we believe that there's a window of opportunity to provide the market an opportunity to invest in the medtech sector and telehealth within that. We also know that it's a great way, once you're listed, to be able to raise additional capital as you're looking for additional funding for growth. It's a 7-day exercise as opposed to 3 to 6 months.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And as the saying goes, take every opportunity and make it great. So When it comes to looking back at your previous entrepreneurial endeavours, what are some of the things you take away from those which have helped you make Doctors on Demand such a success?
Yeah, I think it's don't try and own the whole value chain throughout the journey. In the areas that we're dealing with, there's such high levels of specialisation in search engine optimization, search engine marketing, cybersecurity. As a scale-up or a startup, you're not necessarily going to be able to attract and retain those skills through your startup journey. So know when to use those skills, get the right people and the best people in to be able to provide those skill sets. And you still own the strategy. You still are the voice of the customer. You have the governance practices in place to manage and control what's being done to get the best outcome for the business.
Well, I'm with you, Kirsty. Now, talking about your entrepreneurial journey, it's very natural for entrepreneurs to doubt their capabilities along the way or their skills. How do you know when to quit or when to keep going with an endeavour?
Yeah, look, as a fast growth company in a new emerging sector, there are just so many opportunities that you want to be able to pursue. The challenge is to know, obviously, which are the right ones and where to place your investments. I love the Jim Collins reference to firing a lot of bullets before you shoot the cannonball. And that's very much been the case for an organisation like ours. Are we a SaaS business? Are we a health service provider? So it's a matter of understanding what success looks like, setting up the data to tell you when you are getting close, and knowing when to pull away. And again, you've got founders and stakeholders that become very attached to ideas and very fixated, and that's going to be the game changer. But you need to know when to pull out and when to redirect your energies and your investments and fire the cannonball at the right opportunity.
Wow, well, that's a great answer to a very complex question. So, look, Kirsty, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Now, to our audience, if you're curious about the diagnosis of what it takes to be a successful venture, join us here on Tomorrow's Tech LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram channels. And if we've got you thinking, comment what you think are the key factors required for startup success in today's COVID era. We look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode of Tomorrow's Tech.
Tomorrow's Tech, presented by 3 Dot Digital.